Sat Hashem. Today in Masechet Shabbat, we're starting about 10 lines from the top of the page. Ba minei Reish Lakish me Rabbi Yochanan. Amud Aleph. Ba minei Reish Lakish me Rabbi Yochanan. And Bezat Hashem we'll get to just near halfway down Amud Aleph. Bezat Hashem. Today, we've been dancing around this point, and we haven't directly addressed it really, which is, we know that there is this machloket between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. There's this general machloket about muktzeh, where no, it's not really. I mean, well, let's see. But the point is, Rabbi Shimon holds letle muktzeh. He doesn't hold a muktzeh. It doesn't mean he doesn't hold a muktzeh. What it means is his definition of muktzeh is much more limited. It's much more lenient. And Rabbi Yehuda is much more inclusive. He holds that muktzeh includes many more things. So there are things that Rabbi Yehuda is much more machmir, and Rabbi Shimon is much more lenient. So really today we're going to focus in on Rabbi Shimon's opinion and try to come out with somewhat of a clarity exactly which items going into Shabbat will be considered muktzeh, and which items going into Shabbat are not considered muktzeh. Now, particularly what we're going to focus in is really two different sections of that, which is items, like physical items, and foods. What, according to Rabbi Shimon, what has to be the issue or the problem going into Shabbat, I should say the lack of use going into Shabbat, in order that items and foods are both considered not usable on Shabbat because they're muktzeh. So we've spoken a little bit about this before. We spoke about chalot dvash, right? We spoke a little bit about that, where there would be a chiluk between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon on this topic. But one thing we know for sure is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, there are items that you specifically need hazmana, you specifically need a intention to use for it to be mutar on Shabbat, that's for sure. Whereas according to Rabbi Shimon, as we explained by chalot dvash, there are things that be'etzem they're usable. It's only if you would specifically make an effort not to show you're not going to use it, then it would be a problem. That's like
it's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. If you have machshava, if you put the machshava,
not.
If
right?
you're not putting the machshava,
exactly. Meaning Rabbi Shimon is much more inclusive of what's mutar. So basically, we're going to see is that there's much more of a tzad according to Rabbi Shimon. As long as you don't have some sort of a kavanah or action that shows you're not going to use it, assuming that it's a davar heter, then it would be mutar perhaps to use on Shabbat, whereas Rabbi Yehuda is the opposite. Rabbi Yehuda holds that when it comes to something that perhaps is unclear, you would have to actively do a hazmana, you would have to do something to use to show you're going to use it. Okay, so we're going to start off, we're going to have three sections here, really three parts, but those are the 2 points we're going to focus in on. So the Gemara says like this. Ba minei Reish Lakish me Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question. Chitim shezaran bekarka. If you planted chitim, so you planted these wheat kernels in the ground, ubeitzim shetachat tarnegolet, and eggs that you placed under the hen. Mahu. What is the halacha according to Rabbi Shimon in terms of using those items on Shabbat? Now, before we even see the question, let's just hear, what exactly is this case? You take kernels of wheat, pieces of wheat, you put it in the ground. Now, if it already takes root, means the shoresh goes, of course you can't take that out of the ground. That would be kotzer. That would be in Yesod D'Oraita. So, the question here is, if you put it in the ground before Shabbat and it didn't take root, and now you want to take it out to eat it on Shabbat. Okay, I guess they could eat the grains. Meaning basically it could be either used as a seed or it can be eaten. So you want to take it out on Shabbat. That's case number 1. Okay. Case number 2, before Shabbat you put beitzim under the tarnegolet, under the hen, because your intent, l'chaora, was that it should develop into a chick. I mean, why do you put it under her? That's why you put it under her. But then on Shabbat, you decided you want to take it for use, for whatever use you want to do on Shabbat. So,
there's not enough marit ayin.
But before we get to marit ayin, the question is like this. The action that you did before Shabbat by putting it in the place that it was, is that considered a dechiya, almost to show this is something that I'm not going to use on Shabbat, and then Rabbi Shimon would hold asur? Or do we say no, tachlis it's a...
for muktzeh.
Right, exactly. Or do we say no, tachlis it's a davar mutar on Shabbat, and therefore there's no problem? This is the question.
It's like הקצה בין השמשות לקצה כולה. But
So-
you are a muktzeh, you muktzeh the item to be muktzeh.
Beautiful. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he holds of the yesod of kivan migud etkatzai v'ven hashmashot mitkatzai lekula yoma. Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of that though. But Rabbi Shimon agrees that if it's something that is an action that shows, or a machshava that shows you're separating from it, which was the case we learned yesterday, by the way, where it was ashashit or ke'ara. We mentioned this case where if it's a huge container of oil, your assumption is that it's going to burn throughout Shabbat. You're not allowed to use the extra oil. Why? Because you, mistama, you showed that, no, because mistama, you showed this is not something you're going to touch on Shabbat. So maybe you'll say the same thing is true when he puts that grain in the ground or puts the egg under the chicken, under the hen. This is the she'ela that Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan. Let's read it inside. So, mahu, what's the halacha in this case? Ki let leila Rabbi Shimon muktzeh. Maybe he doesn't hold its muktzeh. Dafka hecha delo dechiya bi'adayim. Maybe it's only where he didn't push it away with his hands. Meaning to say is, Rabbi Shimon holds it doesn't become muktzeh. That's only where you don't do a physical action. But here, but hecha de dechiya bi'adayim. Here where he pushed it away with his hands. He put it under the hen, or he planted it in the ground. So maybe itle muktzeh, he would say, this is a problem of muktzeh. This isn't just a machshava. This is a physical action you did on Friday. And maybe you should say Rabbi Shimon will agree this is muktzeh because you have that extra action involved. Or Yitzchak, maybe no, maybe there's no difference. So he asked Rabbi Yochanan, is the physical action that he did, seemingly to separate from it, is that more of a muktzeh problem? Or Rabbi Shimon says, look, since it's something that is mutar, even though he did a physical action before Shabbat, it's not muktzeh, and he could still take it back to use on Shabbat.
1 second, I need a bit lost track. One
Yeah.
second. קידלת לרבי שמעון מוקצה, אחד דלא דחיה בידיים, אחד דחיה בידיים, את למוקצה. עוד אילמה.
Lo shna. No difference.
There's no.
You hear the question, meaning we're talking here where he does a physical action that seems to separate from this item. So is that
We just
worse?
spoke about the fact with the bed. If you are designating the item to be muktzeh, and you put the money on it, and you plan to use it, so you, no, of course, ma.
If you put money,
מייחד תמאות.
according to Rabbi Yehuda, that was according to Rabbi Yehuda. You're talking about Mem Gimel Amud Bet, right?
But I'm just saying, like, you know,
Slicha, Mem Dal Amud Bet, right?
the whole inyan of, like, you know, the doing an action.
Beautiful. You say it was worse. Now it's for sure muktzeh according to Rabbi Shimon. But the only thing is, according
I'm gonna
to
be surprised if
Rabbi
you're gonna
Shimon
tell me
is
it's
very
mutar.
lenient. See, the thing is, Rabbi Shimon is very lenient. So maybe
but-
he's lenient in this case. Maybe
But
it
we
actually doesn't
spoke
make a
about-
difference.
We spoke about the fact that if your machshava was to do it muktzeh, then it's muktzeh.
Right.
Not muktzeh, okay, but your machshava is not to use it in Shabbat.
Again, the way we see Rabbi Shimon is like this, is if the item is something that would be asur or maybe is mutar, i.e. you can eat cereal, meaning let's say the grains it's used as cereal, for example, whatever it is. So you need dafka something lehepich, you need something that shows I'm specifically separating from this. So that's really the question. Is this action worse? In a sense that it's even going to be asur according to Rabbi Shimon, or Rabbi Shimon says no, that's not significant enough, zelo chashuv, and therefore you are allowed to still retrieve that on Shabbat to enjoy it. That's the
I don't think
question.
if you muktzeh the items, then you muktzeh
I hear what
the
you're
item.
saying. I hear. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan said back, "Ein muktzeh Rabbi Shimon." It's not muktzeh according to Rabbi Shimon. Now the way we're going to read it is the way the Misarat Hashas is girsa, because it works better. Ela shemen shebaner b'sha'a shehu dolek. Only a case of oil in the lamp while it's burning. Now, why Rabbi Shimon holds that's asur? Ho'il, 2 points. Since, number 1, vehuktzeh lemitzvato, it is muktzeh for the mitzvah of, what?
מוקצה מחמת מצווה.
Mitzvah, for the mitzvah of Neirot Shabbat, and now add in a vav. Vehuktzeh le'isuro. And it's huktzeh le'isuro. Now, what is
שמחבה?
lemitzvato? We understand.
עוד דבר
It's being
רציתי
used
דבר
for the
אסור.
mitzvah of Neirot Shabbat, and it's muktzeh for that. Le'isuro means there's an isur if you would try to take some of that oil. What would be the isur? Mechabeh. So therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, it's only muktzeh, according to Rabbi Shimon, if you have two factors. One, muktzeh lemitzvato. Two, muktzeh le'isuro, i.e., if you would take some of that oil, and we'll have more another case later today, but if you take some of that oil, mechabeh, so that's considered muktzeh le'isuro, and therefore, then it would be considered muktzeh according to Rabbi Shimon if it was like that during Ben Hashmashot. But if it was just put in the ground or under the hen, you don't have those two factors. Memele, you'd be allowed to take it and use those on Shabbat. Okay, so even though you did a masa b'yadayim, you did a still, since it's not, that's the way Rabbi Yochanan's responding, it's not muktzeh le'mitzvato and le'isuro, you're actually allowed to take this back on Shabbat. That's the chidush. Mm-hmm. And by the way, and even that, we said it's only while it's burning. According to Rabbi Shimon, after it burns out, you actually are allowed to enjoy the oil, because then the mitzvah is over, as we spoke out. Exactly. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, but wait a second. What you're saying, Rabbi Yochanan, that it's only when you have both factors, muktzeh, machmat, mitzvah, and machmat isur, that it's considered not usable on Shabbat. Is it not enough to just be muktzeh, machmat, mitzvah? We're going to show here a braita that we learned earlier in the Masechta when we were talking about bizui mitzvah. We quoted this braita with Chanukah. We said miner lener. That was the sugya. We quoted this braita. Then we're quoting it here. We're going to show. Right. We're going to show over here, there's a braita discussing when you put up decorations, are you allowed to use those on Sukkot? Means, are those things considered a muktzeh or not?
Oh, we spoke about it.
So the kasha is, we're gonna see, even though it's just muktzeh lemitzvato, even though it's just muktzeh, it's asur. Asur. You understand? Rabbi Yochanan is saying Rabbi Shimon only holds it's asur if you have both. You have muktzeh lemitzvato and muktzeh leisuro. The kash is going to be, you see from a braita, which we're going to assume is Rabbi Shimon's opinion, even muktzeh lemitzvato is enough to make it asur. V'atanya, but the braita says, Sekecha kilchitaf. A person put up proper schach before Sukkot, v'itra v'kramim, and then he decorated it with kramim. Rashi says it's bigdei tzivonim, meaning colorful garments, like a noi sukkah. Or v'sadinin, as well as with sheets, hamitzuyarin, that are embroidered, that are sewed. V'talaba, and then he hung in the sukkah egozin. Egozin are nuts. A farsikin. A farsikin is peaches, I believe. A farsikin. Peaches. Shkedim. Shkedim are almonds, right? Shkedim is almonds?
Shkedim is almonds.
Almonds. Verimonim and pomegranates. Va'afachile shel anavim, and clusters of grapes. Va'atarot shel shibalim, and also crowns of grains. Yenot, shmanim v'saltot, as well as wines, oils, and flowers in bottles. Okay, so you put up all of these decorations in the sukkah. Asur listapek mehen ad motzei yom tov ha'acharon. So it's prohibited to benefit from those decorations, even though they're foods, you could eat them. You're not allowed to on Sukkot until the end of Sukkot. So Rashi points out over here. Let's just finish the braita. V'im hitna alein, but if you made a condition about those foods, hakol lefi tzna'o, means theoretically you could make a condition and then benefit from those foods. Hakol beseder? Okay, so what's going on over here is like this. The Braita says that if he put up these fruits as decorations in his sukkah, asur leistabek me'en kol chag haSukkot, but if he made a condition, then perhaps he could. So what do you see from this? Says Rashi, if you look at Rashi, ad motzei yom tov ha'acharon, v'hacha muktzeh lemitzvah ika, muktzeh leisur leka. So this is not a case of muktzeh leisura. This is only a case of muktzeh machmat mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? Noi sukkah, the decorations of the sukkah. Now, Rashi addresses, but wait a second, maybe there is an isur here also. You hear the kasha. The kasha we're trying to show is that you see, even where it's just muktzeh lemitzvata and not leisura, it's also going to be muktzeh. It's kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said that Rabbi Shimon only holds its muktzeh if you have both conditions, leisura and lemitzvata. But says Rashi, how can you bring a proof from here? Wait a second. This case maybe there's also isur. What potential isur would be, not mitzvah, isur would be in taking down the fruits? What do you think the potential isur could be? No, the fruits, not the schach. What could be the isur? So Rashi addresses, he says chidush. Rashi says chidush. אבל מותר לאכול פירות ביום טוב. So Rashi says something very interesting. On Yom Tov, there is an isur of stirat ohel. Meaning if you have an ohel, you have a tent, you're not allowed to break the tent on Yom Tov. So Rashi says, actually, and he learns this way, the other Rishonim disagree, but Rashi says to take down those fruits could potentially be stirat ohel.
Oh.
It's like breaking down the tent. It's breaking down a cover that was put up before. Chidush that Rashi says. But in order to...
סתירה.
לשבור אותו. לשבור האוהל.
מוריד את הפירות.
No, I was thinking Shema יתקן because it's going to pull out something from the tree.
So that's he says stirat ohel. But Rashi says it's not a problem. It's still not going to be an issur. Why? Because we say all 7 days you're not allowed to enjoy the fruits. What's included in all of the days of Yom Tov? Ad Motzei Yom Tov Acharon. What's included? In the Chol HaMoed, you don't have the issur of stirat ohel. So you see from here, even where it's not muktzeh machmat issur, it's just, it is mitzvah for sure, it's part of the sukkah. So there it's just muktzeh machmat mitzvah, and the Braita says it's asur to enjoy those fruits. As Rashi says, v'hacha muktzeh lemitzvah ika, muktzeh di isur leka. Because what you should say is, on Chol HaMoed, it's like when the candle goes out. Rabbi Shimon holds when the candle goes out, you could enjoy the other oil. There's no isur anymore. So if there's no isur anymore, then you see from here that the Braita is telling us is, even though the only muktzeh you have to talk about in this, on Sukkot, let's say, is muktzeh machmat mitzvah and not machmat isur, still Rabbi Shimon holds asur. Rabbi Yochanan, you just told me you can use that egg or the grains in the ground. Why? Because it's not both muktzeh machmat isur and mitzvah. You see here, it's just a mitzvah. It's enough of a reason Rabbi Shimon would hold it asur. So what's the Gemara saying?
We don't take what Rashi said about stira.
So it's interesting. Rashi seems to be learning there could be a stira issue here.
So it's a two isurim.
No, that's why. It's not a problem at Chol HaMoed. So that's why it's a kasha. Exactly. On Chol HaMoed, it wouldn't be an issur to break the tent. But that's why he's just saying that's how it's a kasha. But the answer to the Gemara is, wait a second, hold on. Who says this Braita is the shita of Rabbi Shimon? Maybe Rabbi Shimon, like Rabbi Yochanan says, holds in order to be muktzeh, it has to be muktzeh machmat isur and machmat mitzvah. This Braita says muktzeh machmat mitzvah is enough by itself. Maybe that's not Rabbi Shimon. Maybe that's Rabbi Yehuda. He's much more machmir when it comes to muktzeh. So it's not a kasha. So the Gemara says, Umimai Rabbi Shimoni. How do you know that the Tana of this Braita is Rabbi Shimon? Maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, no. It has to be the Tana of this Braita is Rabbi Shimon, and the kasha is going to stand. How do we know that? The Tani Rabbi Chia bar Yosef kamed Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Chia bar Yosef taught in front of Rabbi Yochanan the following. What we're going to see actually is there's a second teaching that shows us the first Braita has to be like Rabbi Shimon. Now what does he say? And there's a lot of details I want to add in here. The Gemara and Beitza adds in, so just follow along. Ein notlin eitzim min hasukah biyom tov. This is not talking about Sukkot. This is talking on Pesach and Shavuot. Sukkah here doesn't mean a sukkah of mitzvah. It means a hut. A hut. Okay? So you have a hut outside, and the Gemara is...
This is tolesh.
One second. You have a hut outside, some sort of a... It's not a sukkah, the mitzvah, I'm just pointing at. That's not the point. Kubana. So, you're not allowed to take those pieces of wood from that sukkah, Ela mina samuchla, only from wood that is near the walls of that structure.
We mean it's falling apart, and there's some pieces
just one second. Rabbi Shimon matir, and Rabbi Shimon allows it. Now, I just want to explain, the Gemara and Beitza explains over here. There's a lot that's not clarified. So what's going on over here? We're talking about where it was a rickety structure. We're talking about where it was like a shvacha sukkah. A shvacha, it was a weak hut.
Yeah.
So it was a weak hut, and then even if it collapsed on Pesach or on Shavuot, so the Tanakama is like Rabbi Yehuda, and he says since during Ben Hashmashot it was muktzeh, so therefore on the Chag also it's going to be muktzeh. Now that's only for the eitzim, but minas samuchla. Now, why is it, by the way? Because during Ben Hashmashot, there would have been an issue of stirat ohel, to take from that. To take from the wood of the actual structure would be stirat ohel, to break the structure. Even after it collapses, because since kivan de migud it katzai, the Ben Hashmashot it katzai lekol hayoma.
אז מה זה סמוך לה?
But minas samuchla means if you had extra wood around it, which is not part of the etzem structure, you understand that?
No.
So it's not part of the ohel.
No.
The whole problem
It
is
was a part of the oil?
it was around it. It wasn't actually part of the oil. That's not stirat
what's the
oil.
problem?
So therefore it's not isu. And that's why even Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanakama here, would say that you are allowed to take from the rest of it because that was not itkatzai beben hashmashot. And
מה
therefore,
החידוש?
okay, so we're saying a chiluk, that's not part of the oil, but whatever was part of the oil, even though it was a rickety structure, and even though it collapsed, the main part you're not allowed to take from, because migudit katzai ben hashmashot, but the samuchla you are allowed to take from, that was not included in the muktzeh ben hashmashot. Rabbi Shimon matir. Now Rabbi Shimon says it's mutar. He holds you're even allowed to take from whatever was part of the etzem structure. Okay, he holds you're even allowed to take from whatever was part of the etzem structure.
Okay.
Now, just 1 second. Yeah. Why is that important? What I said before, that it has to be, it was a weak structure. It's only if it was a weak structure, that's what the Gemara Beitzah explains this first part. This is not really a kasha, but there it says that if it was weak, so then it's like, according to Rabbi Shimon, when you light a small candle before Shabbat. Why is it like that? Because it means you're assuming it might collapse. Now, if it was a very strong structure, according to Rabbi Shimon, like when you filled up an ashashit with oil, even if it goes out,
your intention was not to use.
The whole thing's muktzeh the whole time. So the only heter Rabbi Shimon matir is, I don't know the given the katzai the ben hashmashot lekol hayoma, and therefore my intent was only to separate for the short time. But if it was a strong structure, it would be muktzeh for the entire day. So that's the machloket in the beginning. Vishavin, but both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon will agree. Besukat achag, meaning bechag on Sukkot, when you have a sukkah, shehi asura, that will be asur.
בסוכת מצווה.
Even if it collapses, again, even if it collapses on Sukkot, it's still going to be asur, even according to Rabbi Shimon. Ve'im hitna aleha, but if he made a condition on it, hakol lefi tana'o. Now in Beitzah, the Gemara explains that's not nogea to Sukkot. That's nogea to the hut of the other chagim, maybe. You can't make a tanai with the sukkah of Chag HaSukkot. So that's not nogea to Chag HaSukkot. You could make a tanai for a hut of Pesach and Sukkot. But what's the kasha?
אז למה אומר פה לוי מתנה עליה?
That's for the first part of the Braita. The first part. That's really going back on the first part when you have a hut on Pesach and on Shavuot. But on Sukkot, tanai doesn't help you. But the point is, what do you see here? That both, even Rabbi Shimon agrees that when it comes to Sukkot, what's the halacha? That if it collapses, so then you're not going to have an issue of stirat ohel. What's going to be the halacha? Nonetheless, it's going to be asur. Now, why is it asur? Even on Chol HaMoed, there's no issue of stirat ohel. What's the problem, obviously? Chevra, what's the problem?
Again, what's the question?
On Chol HaMoed and it collapsed, so you have no problem of stirat oil. There's no issue. Let's just take that out of the picture. But Rabbi Shimon agrees. Forget about Chol HaMoed Pesach. On Sukkot, Rabbi Shimon says you're not allowed to use that wood. Afilu that it collapsed. Afilu it's Chol HaMoed. So you see clearly the first Braita that we quoted that says the first one we quoted, that you're not allowed to take from the fruits, etc. Kivan de uktzal mitzvata. That's enough to say it's asur according to Rabbi Shimon on the Chag or on Shabbat. So asks the Gemara back to Rabbi Yochanan. You see, Rabbi Yochanan, you don't need both Tanaim. All you need is the Tanai uktzal mitzvata. That's enough. You don't also need uktzal isura.
But again, what is the
according to Rabbi Shimon?
muktzeh מחמת איסור? שמא יכבה?
Yes, meaning it's that if you're gonna use it, it would be something that would be a potential isur. So here we're saying, let's say it's chol hamoed, so you're not going to stirat oil, and it collapses, not stirat oil. It's not a problem, but nonetheless, there still is uktzeh mitzvata. That's what it was dedicated for initially. So the kasha now is, you see, uktzeh mitzvata is enough of a reason, according to Rabbi Shimon, that it's muktzeh according to Rabbi Shimon. Kasha and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said you need both.
למה קשיא?
Because Rabbi Yochanan said, according to Rabbi Shimon, you need both Tanayim to be muktzeh. You need it to be muktzeh machmat isur and machmat mitzvah.
So maybe during the, but you're not using the etzim.
What's
You're
that?
using the fruits. If let's say you want to use the fruits in chol hamoed, okay, what's the isur here?
Sorry, what?
What is the isur if we want to use the fruit during chol hamoed?
That's the point. That's the point. There is no isur. That's the point. Meaning, only because it's a mitzvah, but it's not be'etzim aside isur. So it's not muktzeh machmat isur. It's only muktzeh machmat mitzvah. And that's the kasha. Now this is all because Rabbi Yochanan said, remember the beginning when he answered the question, what about the egg or the grain you put in the ground? He said, that's mutar. It's only a problem, according to Rabbi Shimon, if the oil is burning on Shabbat or Yom Tov, while it's burning. Why? Because you have muktzeh machmat isur and machmat mitzvah.
But we have two chilukim here. The chilukim are not like, we're making a comparison from sukkah on candle to grains or egg that I designated that I'm going to be muktzeh for Shabbat. Like my intention, lechatchila, is that I'm not going to use it anyway. I'm going to use it because I want a cheek and because I want to plant it.
Okay, fine, but the point is, that's not going to have both types of muktzeh, and Rabbi Yochanan said it's mutar. You need both muktzeh machmat isur and machmat mitzvah,
But here
otherwise
it's
not a
not
problem.
muktzeh mitzvah. What mitzvah do I have with the egg or with the
That's exactly
grains?
the point, and that's why Rabbi Yochanan says you would be allowed to retrieve that according to Rabbi Shimon.
Maybe you don't, because we spoke about another thing with Yom
Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan, that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. He said that because it's not muktzeh machmat mitzvah and isur, like the case of ner dolek, therefore it's mutar. The kasha is, you see, Rabbi Yochanan sounds like he's saying you need both Tanayim to be considered muktzeh on Shabbat or Yom Tov. But mizeh nireh, that you're not allowed to use atzei sukkah or the fruits of the
But you have to
sukkah.
have-
It sounds like muktzeh machmat mitzvah is enough of a reason by itself. That's
But
the
it has
kasha.
to be both named for the same inyan, or maybe for some things muktzeh mechamat isur,
Then it would be two
or
different.
muktzeh mechamat
No,
mitzvah.
the same thing. That's what he said. The raya that he brought, he said, "En muktzeh leRabbi Shimon el ner dolek," because it has both tnaim.
מוקצה לחמת מצווה.
Because it's a mitzvah that you're doing ner Shabbat
V'isur.
and v'isur. Because if you take it's kibui.
But we
So the
spoke about
point
the
is,
tree.
you need both for it to be muktzeh, according to
But-
Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon will hold it's muktzeh only if you have both tnaim. Kasha is, but you see by sukkah, Rabbi Shimon seems to hold muktzeh machmat mitzvah is enough by itself to make asur.
אז זה פקע של רבי יוחנן.
Kasha Rabbi Yochanan. So let's see the answer. The Gemara answers, no, you didn't understand Rabbi Yochanan properly. Rabbi Yochanan didn't mean to say you need both Tanayim. That's not what he meant to
או
say.
זה או זה.
A
אולי.
little more than that. Ke'ein shemen shebener kamrinan.
מה זה כאילו?
What's muktzeh? Like, if it's like the case of shemen shebener, what does it mean? Ho'il, this is the key word we're adding in. Ho'il vehuktzeh lemitzvato, since while the candle is burning, and that's the mitzvah of Nerot Shabbat or Nerot Yom Tov, that is muktzeh, it's dedicated for the mitzvah, therefore, huktzeh le'isuro. Evanta? You don't need both Tanayim. You only need the Tanai by itself of huktzeh le'mitzvato, and Rabbi Shimon will hold that's asur. But since it is huktzeh le'mitzvato, therefore it's asur to take from it. Not that it also needs to be muktzeh machmat isur. You don't need that Tanai. Rabbi Shimon will actually hold muktzeh le'mitzvato is enough by itself that now it's asur le'istapek mimena. And
In
Rashi
this
comes.
case, it's another thing.
I need to explain what Rashi says. Very important Rashi. Tistakil berashi. Ke'en shemen ka'amina. Look at Rashi, because he explains now. Okay, so let's explain how this works by the oil and by sukkah. Says Rashi, "Velo mishum isur, ela mishum mitzvah. Deho'il dehuktzeh lemitzvato deshabbat, deshabbat huktzeh lekol zman isur." That's what it means. Rashi learns, "Ho'il vehuktzeh lemitzvat Shabbat, huktzeh lekol zman isuro." What is kol zman isuro? זמן שדולק, beautiful, דליקתו, ולא יותר, תאין מצוותו אלא בשעת דליקתו, ומשקבע אין בו מצווה. That's why you can use the oil after the fire goes out. אבל בסוכת החג מצוותה כל שבעה. Very important. והקצאתה כל זמן מצוותה. So therefore, you hear the chiluk. It's like, what's it like?
The candlelight in Shabbat, the sukkah
Ashashit b'Shabbat. Ashashit. Meaning, when you build the sukkah, it's a normal sukkah, your intention is for this to last for 7 days. You don't build a weak sukkah intending for it to collapse. So memela, even if it does collapse, on Chol HaMoed, you're not allowed to use it. Why? Ha'il, that it's dedicated to mitzvata, it's also going to be asur. So now we're coming out with, this is the first rule of the day in Rabbi Shimon. Rule number 1, when will an item be muktzeh? Rule number 1, according to Rabbi Shimon, if it's muktzeh mitzvato, and again, assuming kol zman of the isur, it's going to be muktzeh. Now the zman of the isur could depend.
Yes.
Regarding dleikat haner, lighting candles, so a normal candle, let's say it lasts 3 hours, it's not going to go beyond that because the mitzvah is not beyond that. By Sukkot, though, the sukkah usually stays. So even if it collapses after 3 days or 2 days, it's still going to be muktzeh because that's what your intention was for it to continue. That's how Rashi seems to learn over here. And that's Tanai number 1, or condition number 1 for
So now,
Rabbi Shimon.
according to what you say, it's allowed to take the grains.
Exactly, that would seem to be the psak.
מה זה?
Exactly, that
אם
doesn't change.
שמת ביצה מתחת לתרנגולת, אתה רוצה שהיא תביא לך לפני שבת שהיא יכולת מזה אפרוח, או שמת גרגירי חיטה על אדמה בשביל שישרישו, ועכשיו אתה רוצה אותם לסיריאל, לפי מה שאתה אומר פה, אין פה מוקצה מחמד.
כן.
But what about maritime? People will think that you are tolesh. People will see that you're taking an egg.
Okay, I hear. We're speaking, I guess, meikar adin like that. I hear. I don't know. Maritime.
Looks like ביצה שנולדה בשבת.
שומע.
I don't know.
Let's go ahead, Chaver. Let's do. Now, this is just a proof to what we just said. It just wraps it up. This point. Idmar Nami, we have a support to this. By the way,
when you want to continue, שומע.
Yeah. No, meaning I don't know the answer. I hear. No, I hear.
שמעתי אותך.
כן, אני שומע. It could be there is maratayim. I don't know. I mean, the Gemara doesn't tell us that there's a problem.
שומע זה אומר...
שומע
כעונה.
שמעתי, let's go right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Rashi points out something very interesting here. I just want to tell you. This is the derech of the Gemara. It really could have quoted the second Braita before the first Braita, and you would have had a kasha. Because really the second Braita, which was Rabbi Yosef Bar Chia Bar Yosef, excuse me. Slicha, where was it? Where did it start? Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef, Kamed Rabbi Yochanan, En Noten Etzim. You could have just quoted this, and you already had a proof that when it's only machmat mitzvah, it's enough to make isur. So why do we have to quote the first Braita altogether? You could have just quoted the second Braita. Rashi explains, the second Braita is Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef, it's less reliable than classic Braitaot. Why? He says, Nechale la'otve mimatnita de Rabbi Chia v'Rabbi Yoshaya, kedamina ba'alma kol matnita de lo mitniya be Rabbi Chia chulei. There's a strength given to classic Braitaot that were written by Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yoshaya, and they're stronger, whether you're asking a kasha or bringing a proof, than someone else's teachings. So therefore, first it brings a raya from the original Braita, which is a normal Braita, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yoshaya, and then it brings a proof from a secondary to support the first. But be'etzem, the first Braita is a stronger evidence because it's a classical Braita. Just an interesting thing, versus bringing from somewhere outside. But anyways, let's see. Itmar nami Amr Rabbi Chia bar Ava Amr Rabbi Yochanan. So this is the psak. Ein muktzeh Rabbi Shimon ela ke'ein shemen shebaner b'sha'ah shehu dolek ho'il v'huktzeh le'mitzvato. Since it's designated for the mitzvah, huktzeh l'yisuro. So kol zman that it's burning, it's huktzeh l'yisuro. Okay, now we go on to the second point of the day. Let's see. So bottom line, rule number 1 we're saying in Rabbi Shimon about muktzeh is muktzeh machmat mitzvah kol zman ha-mitzvah. It's already going to be muktzeh, it's asur to...
הסתיימה המצווה, יכול להשתמש בזה.
That's correct.
כלומר, מה שהנר קבע, יכול להשתמש בשמן.
The oil. That's what he said, right? Exactly. Even the point is, we're saying even Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda is much more machmir with muktzeh. Rabbi Shimon uhlet le muktzeh. This is Tanai number 1 of the day. Machmat mitzvah, he does agree. Kol zman mitzvah, so okay, it's muktzeh.
ריש לקיש, מרבי יוחנן. מה הוא? כי לפני רבי שמעון. סורלת לב, קצת זאתו, סליחה. הלכתה והתרבה קרמי. גם זה נמצא במדל הרגע ובסופו וכנראה כמה לנטרוש שגמיין שבנו סופר מימורל מוקצה יום טוב האחרון אם התנעלה, מה פה לפי התנעלה? ממאי רבי שמעון היא אני לא נכנע ביוסף כמהן רמי הכולם בעצם הזו כביר טוב אלא מן הסמוך לה רבי שמעון מתי לשלום בסופת אחד נכנע בשביל הסוף ומתנעלה הכל לפי התנעלה כאין שמן שבניה כאמין הנועל וקצת נבדו וקצת לסעדיות ולעמי אמר יחיה באבא אין מוקצה בשם אלא כאין שמן שבניה בשם שבניה וקצת לסעדיות.
Very interesting. I see over here there seems to be a machloket rishonim. Ufi Rabbi Shimon is muktzeh machmat isur itself enough to make it muktzeh. Meaning we're saying for sure muktzeh machmat mitzvah is enough. I see that there's a machloket, seemingly it's not so clear if he also agrees muktzeh machmat isur by itself would be enough to make it machmat isur. If you have a case where it's not muktzeh machmat mitzvah, but it is muktzeh machmat isur. So I see the Ran, the Meiri, they would say that that would also be problematic.
According to Rabbi Shimon.
You only need one of the conditions. That's what according to Rabbi Shimon, exactly.
So that's why he's mistader with Rabbi Yochanan, no?
Yeah, but the point is that you could learn he only holds muktzeh machmat mitzvah is a problem. Muktzeh machmat isur is not a problem, but machloket. It's fine. Let's continue. Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Let's go on to the next thing now. Now, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel teaches us about foods. Okay, so that was talking about parts of the sukkah, shemen, all of those things. Now he specifically says about foods. Very interesting halacha. He says like this. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Ein muktzeh Rabbi Shimon. When it comes to foods, Rabbi Shimon only holds it a problem. Ele grogrot v'tzimukim bilvad. Only if it's grogrot and tzimukim. What is grogrot? Grogrot is dried figs, teinim yeveshim. And tzimukim is raisins from grapes, right? Raisins are from grapes, yeah? So what is this referring to? So Rashi explains over here like this. There is a difference between grogrot and tzimukim and other fruits. What is the difference?
There's not enough nolad here?
Hold on. What's the difference? The difference is like this. You know, people dry out fruits, right? You put them out to dry. The difference is other fruits, when you put them out to dry, they're drying so they're not at their best way to eat them yet until they dry out. But even while they're drying, they're ru'uyim to eat. They're fit to eat. When it comes to te'inim and anavim, if you put them out to dry, while they're drying, they're not ra'oi to eat.
While they're drying?
While they're... In the beginning, you could eat it raw, meaning like a normal fig or grape. But while it's drying, it's not ra'oi to eat until it actually ends the process.
Or something.
I'm not sure what the mitziyut is, but the reality, that is a chiluk between figs, grapes versus other fruits. We're going to see this chiluk later. Other fruits, you could put it out to dry, and while it's drying, you could theoretically eat it. It might not be the best, but you could eat it. It's ra'oi la'achila. These fruits, while they're drying out, they're not ra'oi la'achila for that tkufa. Before it is and after it is, but not in the middle. It's not in the middle. So says Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, if somebody puts those fruits out to eat, since he's pushing it away, means he's putting it away before Shabbat for this purpose, and it makes it not ra'oi la'achila, clearly he means to separate from this on Shabbat. He clearly means to separate, and that would be muktzeh on Shabbat, even if it becomes ra'oi la'achila. Means, let's say he didn't think it was going to finish the process on Shabbat, and then for whatever reason it finishes the process earlier.
It's enough properly to use the entire Shabbat.
So what's the halacha? It's asur the whole Shabbat. Even though it made it finish, it is ra'oi la'achila. Since during that kufa, you assumed it wasn't going to be ra'oi la'achila, so it's not going to be permitted to eat. Masha'en can eat other fruits, apples, oranges, pears. Since you could eat it during that kufa, so therefore it's not considered you're separating from it, and Rabbi Shimon would hold that would be mutar. Now, obviously, if he specifically said, I'm separating from this on Shabbat, that would be not allowed to be used. We're talking about where he just did this action. So we're going to see actually there's two parts here. One is the dechiya biyadayim, he put it away. And two is that the food, he did a physical action showing that he's separating from it. He put it on his roof to dry. But the other is it's something that becomes not ra'oi la'achila. So these two Tanaim, according to Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Shimon will now hold muktzeh. So let's see. Umidi acharina lo, says the Gemara, but wait a second. Is by other fruits not the same story? V'hatanya, but the Braita teaches if he was eating figs, let's say he was eating figs on Friday, and there was some extra figs, or so he put them on top of the roof so that they can become dried figs. Or he was eating grapes and there was extra, so he put it on the roof to make raisins. Lo yochal ad sheyazmin. He wouldn't be allowed to eat from those things on Shabbat ad sheyazmin. Amaze yazmin, unless he specifically said, I'm going to enjoy these. Meaning, the action of putting it on the roof is a separation. Unless you specifically said, I'm going to enjoy them, then you're not allowed to. But the Braita finishes off, V'chein ata omer, and you say the same story, Ba'afar sikin, with peaches, V'chavushin is quince apples, V'bishar kol minei perot, says the Braita, and all other fruits. So the Braita clearly says, this is not a unique halacha to raisins and fig. This is by all fruits. Now wait a second, let's step back. Mani, who's the author of the Braita? Maybe you'll tell me it's Rabbi Yehuda's machmir when it comes to muktzeh. The problem is, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, there's no chidush. Because what did you do in this Braita? You put it on the roof, you were doche b'yadayim. Means you did a physical action that showed you're separating from it. But we know, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't even need a physical action for it to be muktzeh. Rabbi Yehuda's machmir. He's machmir b'muktzeh. According to Rabbi Yehuda, even where you didn't separate it from with a physical action. Rashi says, meaning, if you just put it into a storage house, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, if that's something that seems to be separated, even if he didn't do a physical action, he would hold itle muktzeh, it's muktzeh. Certainly, if he put it on the roof, which is separating from it, Rabbi Yehuda would hold its muktzeh. So it can't be Rabbi Yehuda's the Tana of the Braita, because there's no chidush in saying you did a physical action. Of course it's muktzeh. He doesn't even hold you need a physical action. Oh. Helav Rabbi Shimon, it must be the author of the Braita is Rabbi Shimon. You see, Rabbi Shimon holds that in order for it to be muktzeh, it doesn't only have to be something that's not ra'oi la'achila. As long as you did a physical action of separation, you put it on the roof, even apples, even pomegranates, all the other fruits also would be considered muktzeh. So we have a kasha now in Shmuel. So why did Shmuel say just those two? Kasha? Oh. No, Rabbi Yehuda. Really, I'll tell you, Rabbi Yehuda could be the author of this Braita. Oh, but 1 second. We said, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't need a physical action. It's just muktzeh by itself. So why is it then that there's a chidush in the Braita?
But there is a chiluk here. It's normal chiluk. Because you know that those types of fruits, figs and grapes, are not arevuim la'achila, so you have to make the separation.
Yeah, according to Rabbi Shimon.
And if you're muktzeh...
אבל לפי רבי יהודה אין חילוק. לפי רבי יהודה, אתה לא צריך לעשות מעשה בידיים, להכין את זה להיות מוקצה, או להזמין את זה להיות מוקצה. זה מוקצה לבד, it becomes מוקצה by itself. So therefore, what's the chidush to say, if you put it on the roof, you did a physical action, it's muktzeh? And wants to know there is a chidush. Ma chidush. The ochel it's deichale, the chidush is by this food. Why? Sal kada'ata chamina, you might have thought to say, kevan da ka'achil va'azil, he's continuing to eat. Means a guy here, he has a bag of figs, or a bag of apples, whatever it is, he's eating it. So you might say like this, lo libai hazmana. You might say, look, even though Rabbi Yehuda holds, muktzeh is even without some sort of, it becomes muktzeh. I mean, you might say like this, Rabbi Yehuda holds, it's true. If you don't do hazmana usually, you don't say I'm going to use this on Shabbat or Yom Tov, it becomes muktzeh. But maybe in this case it's different. Why is it different in this case? Because since he was eating from that bag, so you might say the eating alone is like a hazmana. The eating alone is like clearly showing he wants to continue enjoying those fruits. So afal pi that he put it on the roof, you might say to yourself, Rabbi Yehuda would be mekil over here. How do I know? He was eating from it, he put some there, but be'etzem he's not separating from it. So kamash malan, loy bayazman, kamash malan, kivan de'elan legag, asuche asche leda'atei minayu. He separated his intention from them. So the Gemara says, no, really Rabbi Shimon says it's only by these two fruits that become inedible when you put them there. The other ones, they're still edible, that's not considered muktzeh. The chidush of the Braita is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, usually you don't need an action. Here, you might say, since you're continuing to eat it, so maybe it's not considered muktzeh, it's not considered a separation. Kamash malan, that put it on the roof, that's considered already action that separates you from it. Memela, even without an action, it would be considered muktzeh unless you did hazmana. So let's just wrap it up for a second. What comes out according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon? According to Rabbi Yehuda, even without an action, it's muktzeh. Bichlal, if you leave something that it's without hazmana designating for usage, it could be considered muktzeh. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Shimon, however, it comes out like this. There's two tanaim with foods in order for it to be considered muktzeh. What are the two tanaim that we're saying? Number one, it has to be ma'aseh b'yadayim, like dachinu et zeh b'yadayim, is that you do a physical action that shows...
You're taking the fruits and you put them on the roof.
You put it on the roof.
That's according to Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Shimon. Number two, it also has to be that the foods you're putting away
It's not
special fruits.
is not ro'oi la'achila.
Special fruits.
But let's say it is ro'oi la'achila. Even the dachinu b'yadayim, pushing it away like that, could actually still be taken back on Shabbat. It's not considered muktzeh that you can't use on Shabbat. So, comes out according to Rabbi Shimon so far, the chidushim that we've said is like this. Number one, we said huktzeh mitzvato is muktzeh according to Rabbi Shimon, the whole time that it has the mitzvah going. Number two, we're saying is when it comes to foods, according to Rabbi Shimon, again, he doesn't hold a muktzeh in general, but he does hold that it's muktzeh with foods. If you did a maseh biyadayim, dachinu biyadayim, you pushed it away, like in this case, you put it on the roof, I'm separating, but also that food became inedible for that tkufa.
So it has to be both?
Both. And that's why if it was a different food...
בידיים ורק גרגרות או צימוקים.
Exactly, because if it's another food that is ra'oi la'achila, mutar.
It's not going to be enough if we're going to put it in the roof.
It's not enough to make it muktzeh.
According to Rabbi Shimon.
So
Again, Rabbi
according to
Shimon's the
Rabbi Yehuda-
meikil, right? He's the meikil. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it is, but yeah.
So according to Rabbi Yehuda, there is few elements here.
Rabbi Yehuda is much more machmir. It's much more inclusive.
Me'erev Shabbat.
Exactly.
asur.
He's much more inclusive.
But also, even if you ate it, you show that you still have an interest. You're not allowed to take it.
Even if he was eating it, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not enough that he was eating it. He would have to also do a hazmana to show that he's going to use it on Shabbat. Why? Because putting it up on the roof already shows that he's disconnected. So basically what comes out is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's much more categories that are shayach to be muktzeh, and you need much more of a hazmana in order to be matir. According to Rabbi Shimon, there's much less categories of muktzeh, so either the mitzvato, like we're saying, perhaps the yisuro, that's a debate in the Rishonim by itself, but it comes out according to foods, dechiya biyadayim, and it's not ra'oi la'achila. Okay, very good. Good. Let's continue. Ba'minei, we're almost out of time, but let's just start the next sheila, and then I will have to stop perhaps in the middle. But ba'minei, Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe me Rebbe. So Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rebbe, asked his father Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. And so far we had Rabbi Yochanan was the first sheila, Shmuel was the second sheila. Those are both Amoraim.
Shmuel is the second question?
Shmuel was asked. The first one was Reish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan. The second one was Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. It's just a statement. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Those are both Amoraim. Now we have Tanaim. So Ba'aminei, Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe me Rebbe.
Rabbi Yochanan Tana, no?
Yochanan's Amora.
Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish bought Amoraim.
Amoraim, ken. Later generations. He was the head actually. Rabbi Yochanan was the head in Eretz Yisrael.
Rosh Yeshiva.
Basically of all the great
But
Amoraim.
Amoraim time.
Right, that's why you always find Amar Rabbi.
The beginning of the Amoraim, right in the tefer between Moraim and Tanaim? Or...
Yeah. No, I think
Rabbi
that Rabbi
Chia,
Shmuel was that. But Rabbi Yochanan, I think, was a little later. I have to double check that though. I'm not sure. But Rabbi Yochanan was known to be the Gavar Rabbi Eretz Yisrael. Like he was the big man in Eretz Yisrael. That's why you often find it. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabba bar Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi
Rabbi Chia
Yochanan.
was Tana.
Because Rabbi Chia was a Tana, but Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. These were Amoraim
Descendants of
who were
Rabbi-
Talmidim of Rabbi Yochanan, because He was the Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael.
So
Exactly.
how come if they mentioned the son of the Tana, that there was a student of Rabbi Yochanan, so that's mean Rabbi Yochanan was very close to the
איך אתה
Tana.
אומר? Student of Rabbi, מה אתה אומר?
אמרת, אמר רבי יוחנן,
Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan.
מי זה בר חנה?
This is his father. No, he wasn't the son. The Talmid.
תלמיד.
Amar Rabbi Bar Chana,
תלמיד
Amar
ישיר או
Rabbi Yochanan.
תלמיד ששמע מי?
So that's not clear. I mean, there were times that he
אם זה
actually...
תלמיד, אז
No, but that's
עדיין.
exactly the point. Is he was so mefosam, all of his shmuot and teachings ran Eretz Yisrael basically. So either his immediate students
exactly.
or that was just the Torah that was spread.
This
So
is a
Memele-
minute student,
Yeah.
and Rabbi Yochanan
Right.
is his Rebbe. It's I mean, there's very like 50, 60.
I'm just saying that's why very often you find Amoraim quote Rabbi Yochanan. They learned from him, or they learned his shmuot, his teachings. That was what they were learning. Rabbi Yochanan was the big man. in
And
Eretz
also,
Yisrael.
Rabbi Yochanan lived over 300 years.
That I don't know.
Rabbi Yochanan lived over 300 years, no?
That-
Yeah, he lived a huge, long life.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Rabbi Yochanan?
Let's go to the final step here. Well, we'll start it at least. So Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, meaning the son of Rebbe, asked his father, Rebbe, Rabbi Yudan Nasi, the following question. Memhei Amud Bet. Patzilei Tmara leRabbi Shimon mahu. Patzilei Tmara, מה זה patzilei Tmara? Says Rashi. Tmarim anilkatim kodem bishulan. So there's certain types of dates that they won't ripen on the tree. I don't know why exactly. They won't ripen on the tree. So they used to gather them, pick them. They weren't ripe. V'konsinotam besalim she'osim milulavin, and they would put them in these wicker baskets. Vehem mitbashlot me'elehen, and they would become ripened in those baskets. Okay?
Okay.
So before Shabbat, you gather these dates, you put them in these baskets. So patzilei tmara leRabbi Shimon mahu. So are you allowed to eat them? Rashi says, le'echol mehem mahu kodem bishulan mi mode bahen demuktzot hen kegrogot v'tzimukin o lo. Now let's stop and think for a second. We learned, what's the pshat, at least the way Shmuel explained to us.
But it's different.
One second, let's just think for a second. Shmuel explained to us you need two tnaim according to Rabbi Shimon for foods to be muktzeh. It has to be
dechiya
dechiya
b'yadayim, and it has to
Not
be food
fit to
that is
eat.
not fit to eat.
So
לא ראוי לאכילה.
these foods we're going to see, it isn't ra'oi la'achila. They're not ra'oi
But there is no
la'achila,
dechiya b'yadayim.
but it's not dechiya b'yadayim. It's not dechiya b'yadayim.
למה לא?
Now that,
Put
I'm
it
not
in a
sure. It's
basket.
very interesting. The way the Gemara explains it, it sounds like putting it in a basket is not the same as putting the raisins on the roof.
Yeah, but you're putting a
On
situation
the
for
roof
something
is
that's not
dechiya
ראוי לאכילה.
b'yadayim. Putting in these baskets is not pushing it away and showing that you don't want
אבל
to
זה לא ראוי
eat it.
לאכילה.
Very interesting. I'm not sure why exactly. I'm going to point that out. No, it's also not ra'oi la'achila, 100%.
No,
So
logically.
that tonight is the same.
לא, אומר פה שנחלים בדוחק.
But
No,
that
it's
means
miochel
it's not-
bedocha.
yeah,
If
yeah.
only
No,
Shabbat.
enachinami. But it's not something that's eaten like that. Tonight, it's actually the same. It's not eaten
Also,
like this.
health problems.
It's not eaten like this. But the dechiya b'yadayim is the chiluk. Now,
זה
why is that a
שונה.
chiluk? Why
זה
is that
שונה.
בעצם a
זה
chiluk?
שונה. To put fruits, the גרבורות of תאנים and צימוקים על the roof, it's such an action that you really forget it. It's there. And it's the pen of the sun. אם אין שמש, it can take a long time. בסל, זה process. Putting a sal, it's much, it can be in the house even.
I hear
זה
that.
נראה מאוד שונה בעין, בתהליך. בוא נגיד שבסל,
That's the pshat.
in 2 weeks, it's gonna be ready.
Rashi learned very good.
ברוף can be 2 days, or maybe 2 months, if there's no sun, it's a problem, because אתה מחכה להשם שהיא תבשל אותם.
Rashi says, beautiful. Rashi learns before that afilu ichnisan nami le'otzer, but was meaning ichnisan le'otzer is not dechiya b'yadayim. Putting food in storage is not dechiya b'yadayim. Putting these dates in a basket is like putting in otzer. So therefore, it's not ra'oi la'achila, like the same thing as those grapes and figs. But it is considered, it's not considered, but it's also not considered dechiya b'yadayim. It's like putting it in storage. So this was the sheila that Rabbi Shimon asked his father Rabbi. Is this also muktzeh or not?
It's not
Rabbi
muktzeh, but it's
Shimon
not going to be
asked
eaten.
Rabbi Shimon asked his father, Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, meaning
Rabbi Shimon.
Haben shel Rebbe, Rabbi Shimon, Shal Rebbe, he asked him, is this muktzeh or
את
not?
אבא שלו שם?
Abba shelo, ken.
את רבי יהודה.
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Amar lei, so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said back, Ein muktzeh LaRabbi Shimon, ela grogrot v'tzimukin bilvad.
רבי שמעון הייתה לה?
Rabbi Shimon, this, it was the son of Rabbi, I assume it was a Tana then, because...
לא, אין מוקצה לרבי שמעון.
Rabbi Shimon the Tana, exactly.
Tana.
No, this is also a Tana, I guess it's the son of Rabbi.
איזה שמעון זה?
Rabbi Shimon זה הבן של רבי.
לא בר יוחאי.
לא, רבי שמעון ברבי יהודה.
השביעי זה רבי שמעון בר יוחאי. זה רבי שמעון ברבי.
אין מוקצה לרבי שמעון.
אלא גורל וצימוקים בלבד. He said no, exactly like we were just saying. Since it's not dechiya b'yadayim, so that's not considered muktzeh. So even though it has one of the Tanaim of muktzeh, it's not considered muktzeh according to Rabbi Shimon. Now Rashi here explains, one second, Rashi. Yeah, because Rashi says, Ela begorot v'tzimukin de'ikatarti. Because by those you have both issues. De'dachino b'yadayim v'lo chazu. So this is not oil achila, but it doesn't have the Tanai of dechiya b'yadayim.
So לשים בסל או באוצר זה לא נקרא דחייה בידיים.
Exactly.
אתה לא מפריד אותו.
כן. Exactly.
אתה לא מפריד אותו, אתה רק שם אותו לפרוסס, אבל אתה לא מפריד אותו.
Exactly. Yeah.
זה לא...
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's a chidush a little bit, but that seems to be the pshat. It seems to be putting it in the basket. It's like putting it in storage. Storage is not dechiya b'yadayim. Putting it on the roof is dechiya b'yadayim. Let's make a chiluk like that.
It is still, like kind of like a separation.
Okay, we're gonna have to stop here.
But it's very vague.
We're out of time. Out of time here.
השעון שלנו נהיה אדום ב-55.
I get scared, you know?
Makes sense.
Chevra, we're gonna stop here. I'll just tell you the next step. What we're gonna do is the Gemara is gonna ask is that we're gonna bring a kasha, because from this conversation, it seems like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi holds like who? Like Rabbi Yehuda or like Rabbi Shimon? Legabi muktzeh.
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi?
No. Rabbi Yehuda Hatana Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon Hatana. Which one does he hold like?
Rabbi Yehuda Hatana or Amora?
Hatana, Legabi muktzeh. The whole conversation of muktzeh, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. This conversation between Rabbi and his son is mashma that he holds like which shita?
Like Rabbi Shimon.
Like Rabbi Shimon, because otherwise, why are they discussing his shita? It seems like so. The Gemara is going to challenge. It's going to show that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi seems to paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, actually.
Maybe for certain.
More of a chumrah with muktzeh, but Bezat Hashem that'll be the next.
זה לא סותר, הוא ענה לרבי שמעון, אבל אני לא חושב.
Okay, so that's one of the ways to look at
it. לא, אבל יכול להיות דבר כזה.
It could be, but be'etzem, if you're asking your father a question, b'shitat Rabbi Shimon, mistama you assume he holds like Rabbi Shimon. Otherwise, it's not halacha. So you could answer like you're saying, but that's Bezat Hashem. We'll get to that.
It's going to be next week, no?
Bezat Hashem.
מה נעשה?
Top of the hand.
וואו.